Here we go with the rest of chapter 22. As they left Sir Royal Books, and Marzana led the knot across Hellbent Street toward Westing Alley and the helical fire escape, 3 separate conversations were happening among them. JJ and Medi were talking magic. Nyala and Ciro were talking steganography. And then there was the imagined conversation happening in Marzana's head as she ran over the possible responses from her mother and father when they found out that she had so completely disregarded their instructions to butt out that she'd immediately resembled her merry band to dive right back in. Would having new information, real information, mitigate their likely fury at all? Ooh, mitigate, that's a good word. Where exactly are we going? Ciro asked as Marzana stopped under the fire escape. Up. Marzana reached for the bottom rung of the low-hanging ladder and started hauling herself up. Is this legal? JJ asked, offering his cupped hands as a boost for Nyala, who was the shortest of the group. It's at least intended to be used this way, Nyala said, huffing slightly as she got her feet onto the rung. You'll see. They ascended one after the other, Marzana, Nyala, JJ, and Ciro, with Medi bringing up the rear. Marzana counted 4 floors, then stopped and peered through the window beside the fire escape. Inside, angled rays of sunlight picked out assorted bits of glowing-colored glassware. This is us, she announced. There was a single brass-handled handle screwed into the outside of the window frame, and Marzana pulled it upward. Careful as you climb in. Everything here is breakable. She slipped inside, followed by Nyala. The 2 of them watched with satisfaction as first JJ and then Ciro entered the kitchen. Whoa, Ciro muttered as he swung his legs over the sill and looked from a shelf on the wall to his right, full of blue and green and purple siphons and labeled seltzer bottles of Brooklyn, to an elaborate setup of spiraling glass tubes and round-bellied beakers on the counter to his left. Is this a kitchen or a lab? Whose apartment is this? Then he gripped his stomach and keeled over as Medi, who had been behind Ciro patiently waiting to enter the room, got fed up and stepped through him. Excuse me, she said, reaching down a hand to help him up. Marzana grinned and waved a hand at their surroundings. This is no mere apartment. Ciro, JJ, welcome to Bone Ash and Soda Lime's Glass Museum and Radioactive Tea Shop. Come on. In the main room, teacups and a plate of thick slices of lemon iced cake had been laid out for 5. Ciro looked around confused. Where is everybody? This place feels empty, apart from us. He glanced toward an arch leading to a hallway the girls hadn't explored on either of their previous visits. But that probably led to more displays of glass in what had once been bedrooms and bathrooms. Somebody there? He called. Nobody answered. The boys looked down at the tea table, thoroughly confused. The girls shared a grin, thoroughly entertained. It's a mystery, Marzana said, remembering Amelia's non-explanation the first time they'd come through this room. She glanced at her watch. But we have a date with Amelia. Grab a piece of cake and let's go. Out into the hallway, then down the stairs, down and down and down until there was nowhere to go but through the creaky metal door and into the basement. Flashlights, Nyala announced, reaching into her bag. Marzana did the same, thankful she hadn't unpacked the little kit she'd put together on Thursday. I didn't bring a flashlight, JJ whispered to Ciro. Me either, Ciro muttered back. Note to self, from now on, always have a flashlight. The girls had to search the basement a bit before finding their way to the room full of washers and dryers, but only for a minute or so. The door leading to the dry canal was unlocked, just as it had been before, and one by one the members of the thief knot dropped down onto 5 Westing's listing old pier. I just want to say, Cyril said as they started to walk them to Mary Mead's private dock, that I vote for the next action of the thief knot, after this whole kidnapping thing is resolved, is to be coming back here to explore. Like, how far does this tunnel go? Amelia says it runs all the way under the street above, Marzana said, squinting to read the remnants of the address on a door in the tunnel wall to her left that stood partly ajar. She was pretty sure it was too soon for them to be at Marymead, but it was better to be safe than sorry. I don't know how far Aldbrooken Lane goes, though. I open doors, I look through windows, I explore alleys and hallways. I assume every staircase has something interesting if I follow it up or down. This wasn't going to be their only adventure, not if Marzana could help it. She smiled over her shoulder at Ciro. Yeah, we should definitely explore more as soon as we can. The Merrymead entrance was impossible to miss. Amelia had not only propped the door open with a piece of rusted pipe, she had tacked a hand-written note on loose-leaf paper to one of the pier's pilings. "Welcome to Merrymead, nerds. E." Marzana waited while the others followed Nyala and her light through the door and down the steps toward the waterworks, then took down the note, kicked the pipe aside, and shut the door. "This is the plumbing under our school's greenhouse," Nyala was saying as Marzana caught up to them in the humid and perfumed dark below the orangery. Far ahead, the flashlight beams found the ladder bolted to the wall, and that leads up into a shed in the courtyard. That's where Amelia will be waiting. "Speaking of which, I'm going to go ahead and see if she's there yet," Meddy said, and then she was gone. Marzana trailed behind the others, content to let Nyala lead the way while she tried to guess at how the hidden Cotgrave Wall station might have given Amelia a clue to the bigger mystery behind Peony Hyde's disappearance. There were too many threads that led, however, tenuously to the cormorants. Emmett's 3 initial suspects, and Mrs. Agravin, and Mr. Otterwell all might have been cups and balls, manipulated by the unseen hand of a magician. And if her mother believed Victor Cormorant had been manipulated just like the rest of them, then Marzana was inclined to believe that was true too. But she was having a hard time seeing all those cormorant threads as so many dead ends and nothing more. As they got closer, Meddy's torso appeared on the ladder upside down as if she were leaning into the tunnel from above. The others hurried forward. "Is she there?" Marzana asked. The ghost girl nodded. "Right outside. Hang on." She disappeared again, and a moment later, the hatch in the shed floor opened, and a thick shaft of greenish light plunged down. "Come on up." When everyone was safely above, Marzana shut the hatch and stowed her flashlight. Meddy vanished through the wall and out into the courtyard. Then, after the tiniest of pauses, the shed door swung open, and Amelia peered inside. "Come on out, naughty companions! Quick, quick!" She swung the door shut after them, dropped to one knee, and relocked the shed with tools she'd been holding at the ready. She stood, acknowledged the boys' impressed expressions with a brief bow, and picked up her satchel from the ground. "JJ, Ciro, welcome to Merrymead." "Holy cow, that was amazing," Ciro said, trying to keep the explosion of enthusiasm to a whisper and only barely managing it. "What's the tunnel? Who found the route? What the heck is up with that whole glass museum thing?" "The cake was warm," JJ put in. "Oh, which reminds me." He reached into one pocket and took out a slightly squashed little slab of cake wrapped in a piece of paper towel they'd found in the museum kitchen, and offered it to Amelia. Meddy didn't want hers. "It was warm," he repeated as Amelia took it. "Who makes the tea stuff? This is going to drive me crazy." "I couldn't possibly say," Amelia replied. "It's a mystery." "That's what she said," JJ grumbled, casting a suspicious glance at Marzana. "Marzana's smart," Amelia said airily. "That's why she's the boss." She took a bite of cake and waved a hand toward the gym doors. "Shall we?" "Who's around that we might have to avoid?" Marzana asked as Amelia led them through the gym. "If you're asking who's in the building other than the Cormorancy kids, there are plenty," Amelia said, pausing to peek out into the locker passage and down the hallway in both directions. "Weekend cleaning crew, teachers, a couple of folks in the office, a couple of resident adults, like the Cormorancy nurse, and I think I saw the chess club arriving when I came downstairs. Fortunately, residents are allowed access to most of the school on weekends. The gym, the library, the dining hall, all the community study areas." "Oh," Marzana said, surprised. "So we don't have to sneak?" "Well, unfortunately, we're supposed to sign in visitors, which I don't propose to do, and I certainly don't want anyone following us down into the station. But don't worry, none of this is an issue," she whistled quietly. At the end of the hallway, near Marzana's own locker, a figure peered out from around the corner. A kid-sized figure with floppy hair, holding a comic in one hand as if he'd been reading. He raised his other hand, made a fist, then made a knocking motion in the air with it. "All clear," Amelia said. "Head for the west stairs. Try not to sound like a bunch of elephants. I'll be right behind you." Marzana bit down several questions and led the way to the big square staircase at the west end of the entry hall, glancing at the floppy-haired boy as she passed. A Cormorancy kid, of course, 6th grader, she was pretty sure. His name was Monty or Murray or something. He saluted as she went by, and she saluted back. Amelia, bringing up the rear, paused to exchange a few words, then slapped him a high five. As they rounded the first turn in the staircase, Amelia jogged up to pass Marzana at the head of the column, When she reached the second floor, she motioned for the rest of them to hang back while she leaned around the corner. "We're clear all the way to the library." She waved them forward. "Let's go." Marzana followed her around the corner and jumped as she came face to face with the girl who must have been posted on the landing. Another sixth grader. Ada? Allie? She grinned at Marzana, showing a mouthful of crooked teeth. "Twitchy, aren't you?" "Just a little," Marzana admitted, a bit surprised to realize that she was. This was her own school, after all. If they got caught, what was the worst that could happen? Amelia would get a talking to for not signing them in. Still, there was no denying it. This was exciting. Really, proper exciting. And Marzana's nerves were abuzz. It was a feeling that seemed entirely out of place at school. Thanks for your service," she muttered. "Don't mention it," said Ada or Allie. A red-headed kid sat right outside the main doors of the library with a book on his lap. He scrambled to his feet and saluted to the knot, to Amelia really, as the group trooped past him. Inside, 2 eighth-grade Commorancy kids who'd been sitting at one of the long tables stood up. Barnaby, a dark-skinned boy with locks whom Marzana knew from history class, and a blonde mohawked girl called Enza, whom she knew only by sight. Marzana and the knot followed Amelia to the table, where she slapped Enza's outstretched hand. "You realize you have cemented your own legend here, E," Enza said. Amelia pointed to Ciro. "We have this guy to thank. His grandfather worked on the stations." "We owe you, man." Barnaby shook Ciro's hand, then turned to Amelia. "We're all dying to get a chance to explore, but this is your show, Cabot. Stay safe. 2 of us will be here on rotation until you come back. But if you're not back by lights out, we're coming in after you," Enza added. She checked her watch. "It's 11:30 now. That gives you 10.5 hours. "Plenty," Amelia said. "We need to be back before these guys' folks start panicking." Anyway, Marzana looked up at the library's gallery with its paired sets of spiral stairs and intermittent heavy velvet drapes. Behind which of those curtains had Amelia found the station entrance? It wasn't immediately obvious how any of them could conceal much of anything. The wall to the east had the doors that led to the hallway and the art classroom beyond. There could be no unaccounted for space behind the curtain paintings on that side. And the opposite wall was the west wall of the entire house. If there was any meaningful space concealed there, surely someone would have found it before now. Amelia, meanwhile, turned to the red-haired kid who'd been standing guard at the library door and who was now fidgeting nearby. "You have everything you need?" she asked him, looking severe. "Plenty of water and ginger candy or licorice or whatever. We could be a long time." "I'm ready," the boy said in a tone that suggested he was girding up for some kind of quest. "I was born ready. I'm your man. Yeah, I get it," Amelia interrupted in a bored tone. "You'll have people here with you. But on the off chance that you find yourself alone and something goes wrong, you'll find Barnaby or Enza," he recited, "making sure to leave someone else at my post." "Good. And if at any point at all you're getting tired, you're losing your voice, you have to pee, tell these guys you need somebody to give you a break. That's why they're here. There's no shame in asking for a break. But if you fall asleep on duty or can't keep on keeping on, the rest of the Commorancy will never let you forget it. Okay?" "Okay," the kid replied, saluting again. "Okie dokie." Amelia bumped fists with the 2 eighth graders and turned to the knot. "We're set. Let's go." She pointed to one of the curtained paintings on the gallery along the west wall. It was, in fact, the one beside the shelf from which Marzana had taken Stanton's aviary the day before. "That's the one, right there." "But how?" Marzana asked. "How is there room? That's the west wall of the house." "There's exactly enough room," Amelia muttered. "Just exactly enough." "Hold off on that for a minute," Nyla interrupted. "Why would he potentially lose his voice?" Before Amelia could answer, the kid behind them began, in a scratchy, out-of-tune, self-conscious, but fighting to power through it voice to belt, "We wish you a Merry Christmas," at top volume. "He does know it's June, right?" JJ whispered. "What he knows is that now that he's started singing, he can't stop until we get back," Amelia said as they crossed the library floor. "He's our canary for as long as we're in the situation. As long as he's singing, we know the coast is clear here in the library, and it's safe to come out again. If he's not singing when we want to come out, that means we stay hidden." She started up one of the circular stairs. 6th grade in the Commorancy is basically community service in the form of lookout duty. Then she stopped and felt for the bag at her side. Crap. Hang on, before I forget. She took out the leather folder the school historian had given her. I brought this specifically to put it back, not carrying it down there. She edged past Marzana and hurried toward the shelf in the center of the south wall. But Amelia, Marzana said, following her, we're not actually going anywhere, are we? Why would we not come back for 10 hours? Amelia waved a hand. It's just a matter of safety. We're going to a space we don't know anything about. I'm fairly certain we won't get locked in. But if we do, we know we won't be stranded past 10 p.m. Also, she added, crouching and shifting books to make room in the right spot for the leather-bound family tree, it's taking a lot of restraint for the rest of the Cormorants to give us time with the station to ourselves. They're all dying to explore. So that was about 50% Enza and Barnaby promising to rescue us, and about 50% Enza and Barnaby reminding me that after tonight, other people get a turn, which is fair. Speaking of which, get moving, Enza ordered. Barnaby dropped his head on the table. You didn't say you had shelving to do first, he said indistinctly. You could have given that to the canary to do. 2 seconds, Amelia retorted. But the suspense, Enza complained. Marzana folded her arms impatiently and eyed the trustee portrait above the bookcase as Amelia shoved the folder back into its place. Then Marzana's hands fell numbly at her sides as suddenly the cormorant threads snapped into place, and all at once she could see the whole web. She'd looked at this particular portrait 100 times. It was one of the youngest of the assorted Cotgrave and Cormorant trustees. The dark-haired girl, who seemed to be trying to look older than she was. The name engraved on the brass plaque at the bottom of the frame was Natasha Felice Cormorant. Tasha. How many times had she heard that name in the last week without really taking note of it? Her mother, after Emmett had asked to be put in touch with the snakebird. Maybe I'll try his granddaughter Tasha, the one who runs the coffee shop down in Shantytown. I think I heard she's trying to make a name for herself. I've never met her. Victor Cormorant, after Mrs. Hacklebaron had suggested upgrading the locks at Marymead. I'm not a trustee, but I'll pass the suggestion on to Tasha. And Marzana's mother again. Speaking of Tasha, I tried to get a hold of her before I called you. I thought since this was a downhill crime, and downhill is more her territory, she might have some insight. Used a couple of emergency channels, in fact. But no luck. How's she doing these days? The recollections swirled in her brain, set to the singing kid's slightly off-key demands for figgy pudding. What is it? Amelia asked. Then she followed Marzana's gaze and fell silent. That's Victor's granddaughter, Tasha, Marzana said. I heard my mother say she's trying to build her own reputation. As a carrier? I think so. Mom was talking about reaching out to her for information. Tasha never returned the calls. She glanced at Amelia. I've been trying to work out how Victor Cormorant could have been so involved in this without having been the one shifting the pieces around. But Tasha'd probably have access to pretty much all his information too, right? Well, I don't have all my dad's information, Amelia said in an undertone. You either, but I guess we can't use ourselves for comparison, she considered. I mean, it would seem the best way for him to invest in her career would be giving her access to what he knows, yeah? But do you really think that in the course of using that access, she'd throw both her grandfather and her cousin, Otterwill, would have to be under suspicion? Amelia made a dubious face. I can't see that. Dubious, that's a good word, too. Marzana considered. She could afford to do that if she knew any suspicion would turn out to be all for nothing later. With the number of red herrings she put on the board, they'd just be 2 more. But a family member would probably be the only person who could manipulate the snakebird himself. Hey, Grandpa, Brian's going up to the Liberty for a couple of days. Stop by Marymead and see if they've got work for him, Amelia said experimentally. That kind of thing? Right. And then, of course, fake Peony would have told her I asked about Victor, which she, good, conscientious granddaughter that she is, would have reported to him right away, but probably as if she got it from a different source. That would explain how we found out about that so fast. Marzana thought back to her mother's comments after Cormorant's visit. He knew he got played. He came to our house to try and convince my mom he hadn't been involved intentionally. Amelia's eyes snapped wide. He came to your house? Marzana rubbed her face. Good grief, I didn't even get a chance to tell you that. So much has happened today. Hey guys, Meddy trotted up to join them. You've got folks waiting in case you forgot. She glanced at the painting. Oh my God, another sourpuss. The glance became a double take. Guys, Meddy said slowly, why is there a painting of Peony Hyde in your school? What? Marzana glanced from Meddy to the painting. No, that's Victor Cormorant's granddaughter. We think... JJ, Meddy called, darting back to the gallery stairs, where the other members of the knot were trying and failing to look patient. She grabbed JJ's arm and dragged him over to the painting. Nyala and Cyril followed, and with noises of exasperation, Enza and Barnaby stalked across the library to join them as well. Meddy shoved JJ forward. It's her, isn't it? Her who? JJ asked, yanking his arm free. The girl we did magic for in Mrs. Agrivan's apartment, Meddy said impatiently. JJ stared hard at the picture. I don't see it, he said at last. The peony we met had braces. That girl on the wall is like 20, and how long ago was that painted anyway? She could be 1,000,000 years old by now. She's not, Barnaby said. That painting was only put up last year. She's a current trustee, youngest ever. They made a big deal of it. She's Victor Cormorant's granddaughter, Marzana said again as she fumbled in her bag for the photo they'd been looking at earlier. Her heart thudded as her fingers found the picture and she held it up in the light. She felt the entire group lean in behind her to compare the face in the little photo with the one on the canvas. 2 girls, one with her dark hair coiled up on top of her head in fancy old-fashioned whirls, and the other with her dark hair parted into 2 long ponytails that hung over her shoulders, one wearing red and gold brocade blazer, and one wearing a t-shirt with the bunny on it, one with tortoiseshell glasses, one without, one with braces, one without. Or was it just one girl? A girl who had been trying hard to look older in the portrait and younger in the photo, and everything else was just costume. It could be the same girl, Marzana said hesitantly. I wish she had a mole or a scar or something so we could be sure. We don't need one. She can change her hair and makeup and clothes and posture and stick braces on, but there's a lot she can't change, Cyril pointed at the photo. Look at the shape of her face. Look at the shape of her ears and her hairline and her nose. He tilted his head, his eyes flicking from one image to the other. I didn't see her in person, but I'd bet all the Tootsie Rolls in town on that being the same girl. You said yourself you didn't think fake Peony was a kid, Marzana. You said you thought at the time she seemed older than 11. That's true. Marzana blew out a mouthful of air. If you say it's the same girl, then I believe it. She remembered her mother's words again. Speaking of Tasha, I tried to get a hold of her. Used a couple emergency channels, in fact, but with no luck. How's she doing these days? Her mom might have sussed out the possibility that Tasha was involved somehow, but Marzana was absolutely certain this revelation would knock her parents flat. The caroling 6th grader took a deep breath and began singing Happy Birthday to someone named Mervyn. Nyala spoke up. So now what? That was the question. Tasha's a carrier, Marzana said, tucking the picture back in her folder. Amelia told us carriers sometimes package whole jobs. What if she put this caper together for someone? The fake kidnapping was part of it. Now we just need to know who it was for and what the rest of the job is. Well, I can at least tell you something about the rest of the job. Amelia shooed them back toward the gallery stairs again. Now we go. Finally, Barnaby grumbled. The thief knot climbed the stairs in an awkward little train and crowded up onto the gallery. Amelia slid partway behind one of the velvet drapes, revealing the ornamentally carved gilt edge of a massive frame. I advise you, in the words of Oz the Great and Powerful, to pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. He ain't pretty. She wedged a shoulder between the huge gold frame and the wall and wiggled in until only half of her body was visible. Marzana shivered as a soft gust of cool air slid along the floor, winding its way around her ankles like a damp, chilly cat. The click that followed was deep and resonant, almost like a note played on a harp. Then, under the curtain, the frame moved sideways like a sliding door. About a third of the hidden painting popped out from under the curtain. JJ, unable to stop himself, peeked around the hem at the rest of the picture, only to back away with a skeeved-out noise, and his hands waved in a gesture of self-defense. Marzana, however, went straight for the other side of the curtain and stared into the rectangular hole that the painting had concealed. To either side of the void, the library walls were a good 2 feet thick, and the velvet drapes were heavy and dark enough to block most of the room's light. Amelia disappeared into the dark, and Amelia said, "Let there be light," she intoned. Nothing happened. In the momentary pause, the singing boy moved on to Frere Jacques. Marzana and Nyala exchanged glances of mild concern and reached for their flashlights. Hang on, Amelia's voice replied. I just hit the wrong button. Voila! With a fizz and flicker, the space behind the painting filled with a glow. A decidedly eerie glow. The light had an odd violet tone to it, and a translucent quality, as if already all the settled dust of the past decades was on the move again. And just as Marzana had suspected, there wasn't much back there for the violet light to illuminate. Beyond the thickness of the interrupted wall was a space about 5 feet deep, with a wall of black brick on the far side and a tiled floor. Amelia popped back into view and patted the satchel at her side. Knowing that the rest of you had not anticipated this adventure, I skipped the nap. You're welcome. And took the liberty of provisioning our party while you were on your way here. Everybody in. I'll close the entrance after us. It opens from inside too? Marzana asked. It does. Everything's in working order as far as I can see. Amelia made a pained face. Kills me that this has been here the whole time and none of us knew it. But even worse is the possibility that not only has it been here, but someone else has been using it all along. It's sort of a pride issue. Anyway, she held the curtain aside. Everybody into the pool. The stairs are to the right. Mind your feet. Here goes nothing, Nyala said, and she crossed the threshold, followed by JJ, then Medi, then Ciro. Marzana took a deep breath and stepped through the opening and into the dim and dusty violet light, just as the lookout down on the main floor finished singing Frere Jacques and launched into Follow the Yellow Brick Road. So exciting. The next chapter is 23, The Reverse of the Message.